Sure. First, great to meet you all, everyone. I was hoping to be there in person. We had a little bit of a COVID outbreak on my end here, and so unfortunately, getting on that flight was impossible. But next time around, hopefully, I will be on campus. So by way of introduction, let's see, have been in Silicon Valley now for almost 30 years. I grew up in India and Hong Kong, and actually first time I ever entered the United States was to go to Northwestern. And so I arrived at Northwestern and did a double major in economics from the Weinberg College, as well as astrophysics and computer science from McCormick, and loved, and soon after that, landed my first job in tech. And in fact, Northwestern was pretty instrumental on that because the type of companies that come on campus to interview students for permanent jobs is quite phenomenal. And so I arrived here and literally have never left the Valley other than coming back to Northwestern to do an MBA at Kellogg. So I've only lived in the US in two places, in Evanston and in Silicon Valley. Just in terms of my journey here in the Valley, it's been phenomenal. I encourage you all to seriously think about the tech industry if you're interested in, but of course apply, your skills across other industries as well, because everywhere you go, there's sort of a massive need for folks that think analytically, both analytics, data science, AI on the business side, as well as the technical side of companies. But in terms of what I've done, as a quick introduction, I started actually as a programmer coming out of Northwestern and was at HP, followed by Microsoft, and spent quite a bit of time on the engineering side before I decided to sort of try my hand at product management. And I found I love product management, so I kind of crossed over from the engineering side into product management, which is easy enough to do even these days. And in product management, was exposed more and more to the business side of the house. And so when beyond product management into product marketing, and then eventually into, fully in the business functions. And since then, since my first jobs at HP and Microsoft, I've done 8 other companies. And these 8 companies have been either from inception, so the founding stage, all the way to an acquisition or IPO. So I've now lived through 4 IPOs and 4 acquisitions, and it's been really tremendous. The last 10 years, however, 10, 11 years, I was in IT software mostly, and I moved over from IT software into data. And that started with working on a platform that some of you may have heard about, which is an open data lake type of platform. It was an open source technology called Hadoop. And there are a couple of companies born out of that, but started on the storage side of data and then moved up into analytics. And so my first couple companies in data were on the data storage side, just storing massive volumes of data and being able to query data at scale. And then I moved over to analytic companies with a couple founders in the Valley, and then eventually founded my own company called ClearStory Data, which was a big data analytics company, and I was founder and CEO of that. And as I went from storage into analytics, what became clear were really 2 things: is that the market was sort of shifting very fast and sort of dividing into 2 camps. One is more and more business people were getting savvy at analytics, and almost every function in a company, whether you were in a tech company or any other industry, every single function had analysts in the function. but analysts that thought with a business mind, like, and what I mean by business mind is how to ask the right question, right? And so much of learning about analytics when is how do you frame the question correctly, right? To make sure that, the data people can get you the kind of answers you're looking for. But that group of analysts has just exploded, right? So there are now, considered to be like, over 1 billion people out there who literally have some form of analytics in their jobs, right? And more so, it's becoming easier and easier for people on the business side to use the analytic tools that are available to be hands-on and answer their own questions. So for example, tools like Tableau have gotten easier. There are many analytic platforms where you can just sort of ask a question and get an answer, and it's connected back to, the data platform. But the number of people that, you'll run across on the business side of the house that are analytically savvy, and all of you, also would need to be analytically savvy, is just like exploding. And with it, the tools are getting easier. On the other side of the house, the data scientists, that group is growing, but it's not growing as fast as the business side, of course. But what's happening there is that they're getting deeper. So imagine analytics is getting easier for everyone. Data science is actually getting more complex, right? Meaning that data science tools are getting more powerful, more sophisticated, and included in data science, it's not just about how do you do basics, data science, but how do you actually do machine learning? How do you take machine learning into deep learning? So all parts of AI as well. And so, there's just a ton of opportunity there, and huge, and the nature of data science is evolving to be broader in the functions, as well as the skill set needing to be a lot deeper, while the business side of the house is it's more people, but things are getting easier. Does that make sense? And so I've done, many companies. After being CEO and founder of my own analytics company, we were acquired by a company called Alteryx, and they are one of the largest independently public companies in analytics and data analytics. And over there, I was chief strategy officer for across product strategy, go-to-market strategy. But just because I had a role that spanned across all the functions, more so, I was seeing analytics being used in every single function, and ended up building a analytics team inside of that company that was a strategic team that served every function, right? And the folks that I hired there were those who had analytic skills, data science skills, AI skills, as well as the business people who actually knew how to talk to the business functions and frame the right questions, right? And how to actually look at answers and say, okay, there's something else here, there's a signal here, we should dig in deeper. So the group actually became very successful. It's like a shared service team for across the company. But more and more you'll see companies doing that, where it's sort of a mix of different skill sets serving different businesses. So let me pause there, because I'd love to get questions from you or know what's on your mind as you sort of look ahead, as well as with what you're studying right now. And here, I can of course elaborate, in terms of, things you're thinking about or questions you have.
Yeah, this is great, Sharmila. Thanks so much for that rundown of all of the amazing things you've done. And I'm sure we have lots of questions, but my first question for you, because I know we talked about it before we went live with students, we now have data science as a minor and a major at Weinberg College, which is really exciting. At the time when you were in school, that wasn't as available. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about your student experience and what you found helpful, if there were classes in econ or McCormick or whatnot that you found particularly helpful. And then also, you know, for students who are in the data science minor major right now, what are some things that they should be thinking about to take advantage of while in that major?
Yeah, for me, because I ended up taking actually quite a lot of math classes when I was there, and they weren't, like you said, you know, data science minors or any such thing, but I did take a lot of math classes, statistics, in economics. You know, there are aspects of it, you know, where it requires thinking a bit analytically, but both kind of, you know, in microeconomics especially, which I found useful. In computer science and studying computer science, I wouldn't say that really exercised that part of my brain. Astrophysics did more because it was so much numbers oriented and a lot of sort of, you know, looking at a lot of data. You know, astronomy is a lot of data. And so, you know, I definitely took classes that was kind of utilizing my analytical side of the brain, but also helping develop it. And that was really helpful. Of course, I wish, you know, there were more classes like, you know, you have now. But where I really sort of developed my analytic skills was really on the job, right? And one thing that I'll say is then, you know, I am working with Weinberg separately on classes oriented around teaching people how analytics is actually used in the business and what does that really mean, right? And making sure that the curriculum has a lot of courses that actually show you how to apply analytics on the business side and what kind of skill set, you know, helping develop those skill sets. So for me, most of my training in this area came on the job, right? But it did help that along the way, the tools got easier. And so one was able to be more hands-on versus like depending on, you know, a IT team to have to, data team to have to do everything for you. I'm sorry, you had a second part of that question.
Yeah, the second part of the question, I know you were talking about like the data science skills and the analytical skills and things like that. And I know you don't necessarily know the specifics of the data science and statistics courses that these students might be in, but what are some things that they should be looking out for to take advantage of to start building that skill set, you know, that of course develops further on the job, but are there things they should be looking for in courses?
Yeah, I mean, more really what you want to look for are actual business use cases. And I'll give you some examples. So for instance, almost everywhere you go, you're going to do some level of predictive analytics, right? Whether it's predicting a sales forecast, whether it's you're in a consumer packaged good companies and it's predicting, you know, what inventory you need to have on hand, shelf stocking, whether it's in retail and you're predicting basically based on a promotion what the click-through rate may be, you're going to see like predictive analytics like everywhere you go, right? The other aspect of it is use cases around, you know, what we call optimization. So pricing optimization, whether you're a tech company trying to figure out which you should price your products at, a retail company, a CPG company, you're going to see cases like pricing optimization everywhere. So how do you actually down to the cent determine what should be priced? But a lot of those use cases you'll also be doing are going to be by segment and cohort, meaning there's a certain price point that works for people who live on the West Coast and another type of price point that works to people who live somewhere else in the country, depending on demographics. And so, you know, there's always like tremendous amount of business cases around that. If you look at the business analytics side, the other thing you'll find, and this is, you know, going back to use cases, literally every day at my job at Alteryx, I owned a program called, we had a free trial for the software, right? And thousands of people would come in every day to try the product. And some of them would use it for the first 24 hours and then they'd like fall off. And some of them would use it for 72 hours and fall off. Some of them would use it for the full 14 days and purchase it. Every single day, I ran a core team called Trial to Win. Every day we analyze that data, which is why are people stopping at the first 24 hours? Why do they go to the 72-hour mark? And we tracked every click through and every single thing. And we looked at all the log data to figure out what was going on, because you're trying to get customers to go through the whole trial. Another part of, what you'll find in terms of use cases, if you're in sales or marketing and you own demand generation and marketing, it's actually a very analytical job. People think it's, writing copy and creative. It's actually a very analytical job. You're looking at the click-through rate of every single thing, open rates on emails. You're doing deep analysis on how a prospective customer goes through and becomes a qualified customer lead, how that lead then converts, and it's just tons of data. For instance, I probably, even today, I do strategic consulting to a lot of companies. I probably look every day, even in consulting mode, at dashboards that probably have somewhere in the order of 25 to 40 reports per dashboard, right? And I think I'm addicted to dashboards because I love drilling into them and figuring out things and figuring out kind of how to make all the connections and connecting all the signals. So you'll find that whatever function you're in, you will be looking at a dashboard. Either you're going to be the one creating the dashboards for the business, or you're going to be the one actually viewing the dashboards and asking questions every day and drilling down and figuring out how they need to be redone in order to get your question answered. Because often the person that owns the data, they don't understand the business, right? They just own the data in the platform. They maintain the data, they collect the data, but they don't understand how a business person thinks and what kind of question you're trying to answer. And so, you're going to be looking at these dashboards and this data every day, and you're going to be saying, all right, I see that when I drop price by 20 cents, sales goes up, but your dashboard may be telling you that, but you're going to be saying, but I need to see the next level of detail. For what demographic is 20 cents drop working versus what demographic would 40 cents drop work, that kind of thing, right? And then you're going to say, and if we do that 40-cent drop, how is it going to affect total revenue for the company if we discount so heavily, right? And then you're going to be working with the revenue team on that. And so, if you're on the business side, these are the kinds of things you're going to be doing every day. And you're going to be moving between the business functions, trying to answer all these questions, drilling down more. And then you're going to go to the data team and say, I need to see XYZ as well, in short order. If you're on the data science and data team side of a company, over there, you're going to be trying to sharpen your skills on how sophisticated you can get in terms of the data science models that you use to answer questions, right? So I could say, for instance, going back to the trial software example, I could say, and this is a real example, that when it comes to trialing software, people seem to do it mostly on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. That's when the most download happen. And that's probably because they have more free time. They use the product a lot if it's a Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday starts and then they're busy with their day jobs and they don't do it. And we'll see these patterns and, we'll ask the data science team, look, what we really need to know is who are these people? What do they look like? What are their jobs? Is it a certain kind of job that then takes all their time Monday? And the data science team will say, I think we have a better way of answering that question. And they'll go do some very sophisticated model. right? And come back with, those very deep answers. So that partnership between the business and the actual data and data science teams is a critical partnership. Whichever side of the house like you want to be in and land on, you will be working with each other, right? The other thing that's happening in data science is we push more into, for those teams, push more into AI. And you said, what is it that we should want to also see and learn in these courses? You want to get good at more advanced data science. So not just things like predictive and prescriptive, but edging into how do I build like a machine learning model, right? How do I build deep learning? How do I build reinforcement learning? This is like very advanced and pushing into the AI area. But you'll be surprised to hear that the things you touch every day are actually using those models. When you go on Amazon and you buy something, that recommendation system they have, it's all data science, and it's getting more and more sophisticated with more and more machine learning and AI models underneath, right? When you go to Airbnb and it does dynamic pricing, right? It's all in the data science and AI team that's coming up with that. When you call an Uber and it's the busy hour and the price goes up, it's completely built on a whole platform that a proprietary platform they did on also their own version of dynamic pricing, which is based on time of day and how many cars are available and how many people are actually looking for a car. So you'll see every time you go use any app today or application, just think, oh, there's a data science model running behind this. There's, analytics going on here. It's like everywhere, right? So what I believe needs to happen and what you should spend more time on is really try and get to understand use cases and how you apply what you're learning to some real world situations. There's just tons of them and they're everywhere. Every single thing you do, when you play a song on Spotify, they're analyzing how many times you played that same song and what other similar music you would like. You know this, right? So you've got to start thinking about the use case every time.
Yeah, I love that mindset, Sharmila. Thank you. And definitely something that's great for these students to consider in any class, that they're in, whether it's data science or stats or math or econ. And my next question, I do have another question, and I also want to send a shout out to students. I know I see Lydia and Blanca and Kate on their video, but any students that are on the call, feel free to at any point raise your hand and or send in a chat if you have any specific questions for Sharmila on any of the topics she's diving into. But Sharmila, my next question for you right now is around the first job, because I know you mentioned there's a lot of opportunity right now. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about your first job and like what that was like, and and also talk to these students about what's available to them as a recent grad. Is it mostly the data side? Is there stuff on the business side? I know that this is a big consideration right now for students to really feel confident in that first job, when I know it doesn't always work out to be like the perfect plan A, right? So curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking the data science minor, which I believe most of you are, right? You are extremely marketable. You're going to have a lot of people interested in, a lot of companies interested in talking to you. And so if you take as many courses and absorb that minor as much as you can. Analytics and data science is like the hottest skill set to have, right? And you will find that you have a ton of opportunities across like every industry, right? So I think, what was my first job like? I probably won't go too much into that because my first job is nothing like what your first job is going to be. You all are at a time where your first jobs are going to be just mind-blowingly exciting, right? And if you're particularly in the field that you're in, and if you go into analytics or data science side of a company, you're going to be one of the teams that are the most sought after team in the company. Everyone's going to want to work with you and talk to you in every business side and everything. You're going to find that your speed at which you develop your skills, both in terms of thinking and the tools you use, is going to be at an accelerated rate, right? You're going to be working with some of the smartest, brightest minds in the company who are on that side of the house. And you're going to basically be presented with business problems every single day that you're trying to solve with data, right? And it's going to be super exciting. I can't imagine like a better time to land in a company and have an analytics or data science job. And don't feel like you're going to be isolated from the business. You won't be, because nothing is happening today in those teams that's not actually a partnership with the business, right? And you may, decide that you want to land on the deeper side of the house where it's a data science analytics team, or you want to land on the business side of the house where you're working with data and answering business questions. Both options become available to you. But it's definitely one of the best times to be and studying what you're studying, and you're going to have just huge opportunity across every industry. I think all you got to show is that you've taken enough, you've built enough of a foundation at Northwestern on the data science classes. You should show that you've done some interesting projects. Like I hire a lot of people. We look for interesting projects that you've done. Like I just was working with a graduate who did a project that was around employee retention and employee churn, right? That was one of his class projects, and was super marketable to most companies because they're like, wow, you could work in the HR department, or you can work in the finance department, so just make sure. I'd encourage you to make sure you get it. I'm sure you do these projects in group, to really highlight that on your resume, like any project teamwork that you've done, any kind of use case oriented projects that you've done where you've had to answer like a specific kind of question. Like, doesn't matter how much detail you put in your resume around those things, you should put that on your resume or your LinkedIn. Because that's what people want to see, that you have the foundational understanding, but you also have the understanding of how to apply it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, the use case piece that you were talking about earlier. And
yeah,
Sharmila, I love hearing this, that the data science is so marketable, right, to employers. And I know that I've heard from campus partners that that's what students are feeling like. This, I need to get in on this data science. For students who maybe don't have that deep math, experience, or maybe that deep math mind, where, with the data science, the way we have it arranged right now, and it's the data science and Department of Statistics together. There are a lot of those tougher math courses. For a student that's intrigued by these concepts and maybe want to get in on the business side of like asking the right questions, how would you recommend they approach a career in data science when they may not have that math mind? Is it possible?
Yeah, you don't really need a math mind. It's more about like curiosity. You have to have a curious mind. You need to want to ask like deep questions, right? When you see something, if somebody give you a dashboard and you're like, that looks good, thank you, and you don't poke it and you ask deeper questions, it's really not about needing a math mind, right? I'll tell you, I know kids in colleges who did not do well in math at all in high school, and are excelling at analytics and data science because they have street smarts and they know how to ask questions and they have curiosity and they know how to apply it, right? And they're working on projects that they're topics that kind of interest them anyway, right? But you don't really, it's not like a math mind that you need for analytics. It's more about mental framing, like how do you frame things, right? And how do you actually see cause and effect, right? How do you identify signals, right? It's that kind of mind. I'll give you an example. I told you I look at dashboards every day. I may see a week where the number of downloads for the software is way up, right? And then 3 weeks later, there's a similar kind of spike. And 5 weeks later, there's a similar kind of spike. That first spike is, all right, maybe, this is an outlier. When you see it twice, 3 times, like several weeks apart, it's no longer an outlier, it's a pattern. And now you're asking, what was happening that week? Like, what did the company do? What did the marketing team do? What did someone else do that caused that spike, right? Sometimes it could be the marketing team did nothing. The sales team did nothing. Actually, the product team did something cool. They put kind of a new little, pop-up message when you open the software that made things easier for everyone. Something went up. But you've got to have that curious mind, right? And even today, I work with CEOs who still aren't able to figure out how to write. They know they should be asking different kind of questions, but they're still trying to figure out themselves how to ask those questions, right? But that's why you have a great opportunity. It's about framing, it's about curiosity, it's about really wanting to peel back the onion on everything you see and asking the right questions. In terms of figuring out how to answer the question, again, it's not like as much math as it is about how you think analytically, how you model, how you understand, hey, where's the right place to apply prescriptive analytics? Where's the right place to do predictive? Where's the right place? Where is it that, it's more statistical in nature? Makes sense?
Absolutely. That's
I don't know if you're learning this, but, how do you pick the right dimensions from your data set to work with?
Yeah. Interesting. This is really great to hear. And I'm sure helpful for students, who may have that math mindset or may not.
Or may not, yeah.
Exactly.
I'd love to hear from all of you on what you're thinking right now. We've been talking, if we can open it up.
Absolutely. Students, feel free to turn your microphone on, raise your hand if there are any questions. And I also can continue asking some questions that have come in from other students who may not want to ask them over the public chat. If you want to send me anything, you can send it to me in a private chat. But I see Sarah has her hand raised. Feel free to turn your microphone on, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah. How are you doing today?
Nice to talk to you.
Hi, it's nice to talk to you as well. I just had a quick question because I'm really interested about the intersection between social policy and like public policy and data science. And I was wondering, have you ever encountered the intersection in your career?
I sit on a couple boards and actually sit on public policy committees. But we look at things more from the regulation side. And so I personally, my experience is mostly around, meeting kind of regulations. I sit on a board right now too that has to do with, public policy around climate change and such. And so my experience there is not so much about the intersection, it's deeply into kind of, public policy as it relates to meeting certain regulations. And I haven't actually applied much of an analytical it's been less of an analytical area. It's really more been discussion or kind of a regulatory and strategic set of topics. Less about applying analytics and data science if you're thinking about how that relates.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. And Sharmila, I had a question come in from Kate, who's in, she's in a place where she can't talk right now, but she's asking if there was any particular activity or opportunity that you had during your undergraduate years that you feel helped advance your career.
Well, yes. So the opportunity was one thing that attracted me to Northwestern was the ability to double major. And I took advantage of the ability to take classes across Weinberg and McCormick a lot. Like that was actually one of the #1 reasons I picked Northwestern. You know, I looked at MIT and Caltech and all that, given what I was studying, but I picked Northwestern because of the ability to take classes at both. And if you have the option to do that, I'd encourage you to do that, right? You don't have to go all the way to double majoring, but it gives you the ability to at least, you know, go outside of your core college. And so I explored across the board. I mean, I ended up mostly spending my time between Weinberg and McCormick, but, you know, I actually went and even took a class at Medill and, you know, all of that because it has so much kind of, you know, Northwestern just has such a wealth of things that you can learn. But I did lean more towards the classes where I felt like the class was more practical in nature versus deeply academic, right? So, you know, that's sort of what, you know, helped me a lot. And then how did all of that help me in my jobs? So what's interesting is when I was looking at internships, because I had taken classes across the 2 schools, I got actually a lot of offers in investment banking and from tech companies. And it was sort of interesting when it came to my permanent job, it was the same way. And my first couple summer internships I actually did in investment banking, not in tech. And then when I was looking at companies, when I was graduating, I interviewed with both, right? Technology companies as well as banks. And I just ended up, you know, it was kind of a toss-up, but I ended up saying, all right, I haven't lived anywhere else outside of Evanston, and this whole idea of like someone moving me to like the West Coast sounds kind of nice. And so I'll lean towards these tech companies. And I'm so glad I did, because my life would not have been the same. And it's been an amazing journey. And so that's how I ended up here, because all the investment banking jobs were in New York. And I was like, okay, I could go to New York or stay in Chicago or go check out this place they call Silicon Valley. So the companies actually, you know, bring you out and you interview on site. And I came out here and I was like, wow, it's gorgeous. It's sunny. The people are so nice. These tech companies are like flourishing. Here's Apple, here's this. And I was enamored by the whole thing and I ended up with a tech job. And then it's been one thing after the other since then. But, you know, when you do take classes across the different colleges or kind of more variety versus sort of pigeonhole, like data science analytics, keep doing what you're doing and highlight the projects that you're working on and practical cases, like definitely do that. But don't silo yourself too much or become too single-threaded. Take diversity of classes across a couple colleges, even if it's a few, because it's going to make you very marketable, and also it'll give you more choices when it comes to the type of companies you talk with for jobs, you know, across industries.
Absolutely.
The Northwestern is really exceptional at that, so you should really, you know, take advantage of the fact that they allow you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know even some of the data science minors on the call, maybe even from like housed in colleges outside of Weinberg College. So they may be taking most of their courses in journalism and doing some data science. So I think that's really helpful to hear, Sharmila. And
Yeah. I want to add one thing to this is there is a data science major being launched in the fall. And if you love data science enough and you still have the ability and you want to really go that route, then take the major and you can lead with that for a lot of the opportunities you might be pursuing, but still take minors in kind of more diverse classes. If you really want to end up on the analytics or data science side of a company, either on the business analytics side or the data team, then, maybe, and I don't know what Northwestern allows you to, but, you might want to upgrade to the major and then take the rest of your classes and minors and some of the other topics. And that way you'll be leading into these jobs to the analytics side of the company. The other way around may end up leading you into wherever you did the major with some aspect of it being around data science or analytics.
Yeah, that's really helpful to consider. Thanks for that advice, Sharmila. And I see we have a question from Brian that was sent in to me directly, and I see Nora's hands raised. So Nora, if you want to turn your microphone on and ask your question, we'll get to Brian's question next.
Yeah, my question you just touched upon actually, but you focus quite a lot on the analytics part of data science, but I was wondering about what the opportunities that you had looked like for the data science in tech companies.
So the kind of opportunities so this came later, right? Because data science analytics wasn't like, intertwined into every job way back when. But as I started to move into it, what happened is I started a whole lot of my first tech companies and tech jobs that were not analytics companies. They were in IT software. And what I found is that more and more we were all the time talking and looking at data. And so analytics became something that I was doing every week, I moved from the engineering side to the business side. And so suddenly every week I was looking at data. And that made me think, wow, this is going to be huge as we get more data driven. And I ended up then eventually doing like I told you, the last 10 years of companies were actually data and analytic companies themselves in tech, but my previous companies were not, right? It's just that what happened on those jobs is that I found increasingly year after year, more of the job was, constantly looking at data, right? And so it pushed me into wanting to be at a data company myself, and then pushed me into, I want to found my own data company. So that's how that went.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you.
But, I love data. I'm also very naturally curious. So for me, and the way I'm built, it's like, great. Like I look at something and I want to know more. And if you want to know, it's just, it's a good skill to have where you just are constantly curious. Because if you're constantly curious, then most of the time, 90% of the time, the only way to answer that question is like, digging into data.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sharmila. And Blanca, I see your hands raised. Let me get to Brian's question and then we'll come right back to you. Brian was asking, how do you feel about applying data science to product management? Is there any benefit coming from data instead of a SWE position?
Yeah, I think data science and product management there's only kind of one area where it comes into product management, which is when you do a lot of user testing at scale, or if you're looking at log data, right? So you have a certain kind of product, users are clicking through, the log data is being collected, and someone on the product management team or a couple of people on product management team actually responds to looking at user behavior data, right? And using that user behavior data to determine how to improve the product, how to improve the user interface, how to improve the user experience. And so that's when it comes into play in a product management role. The other place it comes into play is when you're launching, say, a new product in a beta program, and you've got to figure out, you know, who you want in the beta program, how that beta program goes, how you're going to take survey results from the beta users, roll that up to determine, you know, what features are most important. But in product testing, product early launches, product programs like launching betas and all, you do use analytical skills. In deep kind of user research side of product management, like deep user research, which is what button are they clicking and what are most people doing when they come to this screen and the next screen, that's all in the user experience team. And user experience teams are a big part of product management, especially these days where everything has to have an amazing, easy user interface, whether it's an app or a cloud product. And so the user experience teams tend to have a lot of data science folks that they hire. But if you are looking to go into product management and you want to leverage data science skills, look at their user teams and user research teams and that product management group.
Yeah, that's great. Brian, let us know if you have any follow-up questions, but Sharmila, that's really helpful. Thank you. And Blanca, I see you have your hand raised, so if you want to turn your mic on next.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because the previous question touched upon it a bit. So I'm currently double majoring in physics and data science. I could relate certainly to the math part of physics, like every week, too much math. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm currently like, I want to go somewhere into tech, and I'm very much between data science, project management, product management. I mean, it's hard to know really what you want to do because it's not something you said you get experience in a classroom. And my question was kind of like, as you mentioned in your career path, you tried all these things, and kind of what drove you, like before and even now, drove you through your career path to like try on these new like product management, project management, and data science, instead of just kind of sticking with one?
Yeah. So first, I think, you know, to break into product management for your first job, you know, you'd have to show that, you know, yes, you have data science skills, but, you know, you've got kind of more skills than that, because product management is more about, you know, do you really understand product, and do you know, you're not going to be responsible for designing a feature right away. You know, that takes a while when you get that job. But do you know how to look at data and look at user behavior, and can you be part of the testing, the team that does, you know, by the way, the other area in product management you might want to think about is, you know, one takes what we call like, you know, market requirements, where you get feedback from customers, you determine what should go in the product roadmap. You know, that's a good place to start, that then turns into a product requirements process. So there are many areas like that. Program management and product management functions is a great place to start, because if you start with program management, it's quite general and it's easy enough to do. And then from there, it's a natural step towards full product management, as you know, you demonstrate your skills on the job. Right. So for me, that's what I did. I took my computer science major and I started engineering. But when I was sitting there coding all the time, I got exposed to the product managers, because we had to work with the product managers. And I thought, okay, you know, I kind of prefer what they're doing in terms of defining the product versus actually them defining it and me coding it. I was like, I'd rather be part of the team that defines it. And so, you know, in that, you kind of have to have good communication skills. You know, some coders are just, you know, very, very, they love coding, and they maybe just, they don't want to deal with, you know, I know I work with a lot of engineers and they're like, I don't want to go to a meeting, right? Or I don't want to talk to anyone. Just tell me what we need, and I just want 7 days of coding. That's a certain kind of personality. You know, my personality was, I liked to talk to people and I liked being out there. And so product management became a natural thing, because if you're good at engineering, then, you know, you're going to be good at defining product. You don't have to be an engineer to do it, but if you tend to be more comfortable, extroverted, then you go into product management, you go into user research, you go into customer feedback kind of roles there. But I moved from engineering into product management because I preferred the people side of it, and learning also how do you actually define a product, right? And that step into product management then got me exposed to the business side, because when you define a product, you're then working with the business, because the business is saying, there's this market opportunity. We think if we can extend the product to have this new add-on, there's another 15 billion of market opportunity available like this. Then you're shifting into those kind of conversations. So that moved me from product management to more business interaction with all the business teams. And then I fully swung that way. But I literally think that what I like about you all doing the data science minor is that some of the analytical way of thinking and the technical skills will serve you really, really well if you go into the business, right? If you choose to go all the way into the business, because I think what served me well is that I started with being in a more analytical function, and that made me a good product manager, and that made me even better at the business side, right? Even today, like, I have, like, I can just see something and go, okay, there's something going on with that data, right? And so it's a very good progression. And I would encourage you to start in a program management role in product management if you can, because it's really nice about product management. It sits in the middle of engineering and the business. You can go deeper that way into a data science team. You can go the other way right out to the business. I started all the way to one end and did the hop. But PMs, I love working with PMs because I see a lot of PMs go, I want to go into the engineering team. I want to become engineering management. And product managers would then go, oh no, I want to go into the sales side or the marketing side or finance side.
That's great, Sharmila. And Blanca, let us know if you have any follow-up questions, but that seems like a really nice summary. And Sharmila, we're approaching our last few minutes together. The hour has really flown by. Students, questions, feel free to raise your hand for any few last burning questions. But if not, I'd love to close, Sharmila, with any last advice and insights you have for students, and maybe even what you wish you could tell yourself when you were in these student shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the advice goes back to some of what I was talking about. Take courses outside of Weinberg if you can, expose yourself. Whatever you learn in data science, try and get into, if there are any courses that allow you to apply it, or even if you're project-based work that you do at Northwestern, and being able to highlight that has been is very enriching, right? Project-based work where, you're working with a team on a kind of a real world problem, that kind of thing. So do a lot of that. If you love what you're learning in data science minor, then consider the major if there is a way to do that, right? But if you decide not to go the major route, keep doing the minor, because together with your major, like, this minor is going to serve you really, really well.
Yeah, this is so great, Sharmila. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with students today. And of course, we wish we could have done it in person, but hopefully there will be another opportunity to have you on campus and meet with students in Kresge like we had planned.